South of Leeds City, the River Aire leisurely meanders down to a weir, which forms a mill pond in front of an imposing brick building. This is Thwaite Mill's Watermill. Constructed between 1823 and 1825, it began manufacture of oil from rapeseed under lease to W.E. Joy and Sons of Leeds. In 1872, the lease was taken over by the Horn family, who converted the mill to stone crushing, installing grinding machinery, much of which we can still see in action on our tour of the mill. The Horn family managed the mill until a devastating flood destroyed the weir in 1975. In 1978, the Thwaite Mill Society was formed to restore and preserve the site. The mill is now run as a museum by Leeds City Council. We begin our visit at the house, which was built in 1823 on the foundations of an earlier building. It was originally home to the family and servants of the mill managers, but by the 1950s was largely abandoned and mainly used as the works office. The kitchen, with a traditional range and other period pieces, including a grandfather clock. Off from the kitchen and at a lower level is the scullery. In a rear room is the manager's office. The living room is furnished representative of how it would have been in the wartime 1940s. The Times reports, "The pursuit of Rommel continues." In the garden, an air raid shelter continues the war theme. Emerging from the house, it is clear to see the site is located on an island. To the south side is the Aire and Calder navigation, with the River Aire to the north side. The raw products for the mill's processes would be delivered by boat on the canal. Flint used at Thwaite was collected from beaches on the south coast, shipped to Goole before loading onto barges for the journey to Thwaite. China stone came from Cornwall, whilst chalk came from quarries on the Humber. We commence our tour of the mill on the first floor in a visitor information room. Here I describe the operations involved to grind flint and china stone for use as pottery glaze. Also grinding chalk to produce whiting used in pharmaceuticals, polish and paint. After the 1920s depression, excess whiting was used to make putty, the main product until closure in 1976. The model water wheels explain the overshot and undershot types. The two wheels in the mill are undershot. Almost all of the machinery in the mill was driven by two water wheels, using a network of line shafts, gear wheels, pulleys and belts, all connected to carry power of the water wheels to every corner of this three-storey building. The wheels were designed and built in the 1820s by Thomas Hughes and are low breast shot wheels. Here the water is visible, passing beneath the wheel. Here is an edge runner mill or Tommy stones. Alongside is a jaw crusher. This is the smaller of the two water wheels. On the floor above the water wheels, we first come to the chalk bagging area, where ground chalk comes from the mill via chutes into this area to be bagged in Hessian bags for onward distribution. In the 1930s, the water levigation method of chalk grinding was replaced by the Raymond mill, a large and complex machine which crushed the chalk into a fine dust. The Raymond mill spanned all 3 floors of the building and was powered by a Marshall engine. The Marshall diesel engine drove the Raymond mill as the water wheels could not generate sufficient power. Due to it being in a confined location with limited light, it could not be filmed, but outside can be seen the exhaust pipes and silencers directly next to the engine room. The Marshall engine was very similar to this one. Putty is made by mixing together linseed oil and ground chalk, known as whiting. It was applied to window frames to hold the panes of glass in place. The Horn family began making putty in the 1920s. It continued to be their main product until closure in 1976, after the devastating flood destroyed the weir. Once the putty had been mixed, it will drop down a hole in the floor onto a cart. From there it will be spooned into putty containers by hand. Only 1 or 2 men could work in this room due to its size. The Horn family produced ground flint and china stone for the local pottery trade, where it was used to glaze pots. Both were produced separately using the same equipment, but flint had to be burned in kilns first. The stone was ground in the grinding pan for 12 hours. The 4 stones in the pan weigh approximately 1 ton each. The wash tub was used to clean and grade the crushed stone. This was important for the flint, as any pieces of wood left over from burning would float to the top and be removed. The levigation pits were used to grade ground chalk. The finely ground material would float through to the farthest pits, and the heavy material would sink into the bottom of the first pit. Fine grades would be air dried in the attic, and the rest would flow into an open wooden half pipe called a launder, which would carry it across the yard to the drying sheds. Powdered chalk is an incredibly versatile material. Once dried, it was known as whiting and was sold for whitewash, putty, polish and paint. The sight and sounds of the water-driven machinery is quite mesmerising. The whole building feels alive, and so long as the river flows, this power is free. petter engine was used to complete customers' orders after the weir was destroyed and the water wheels stopped. It was used until the mill closed in 1976. In a separate building behind the mill is a workshop for the engineers who maintain the machinery in the mill. The lathes are also powered from overhead shafting, driven from the mill water wheels. Note the stove and kettle. Flint is so hard that it cannot easily be crushed. The Horn family built kilns in 1872 to burn the flint stone and make it brittle. The flint would then be transported into the mill to be crushed. Little now remains of one kiln. Here we see the floor of the drying sheds, where the slurry was poured to a depth of 5 to 6 inches. Furnaces heated the floor, and it took about 2 days to dry the slurry thoroughly. The warehouse is one of the oldest buildings at Thwaite's Mills. It was constructed in 1825, just after the main mill. It has always been used to store the finished dry products. In the entrance to the mill is this 1916 International Harvester Titan tractor, which I had the good fortune to film in 1993, just on completion of its restoration to working order. Since when it has been exhibited at this most unique example of Yorkshire's industrial heritage, Thwaite Mills Watermill.